The first thing I noticed wasn't the silence, it was the door. It stood open just enough to notice, not wide, not careless, just wrong. I stood in the hallway, grocery bag cutting into my fingers, heart calm in a way that only comes when something inside you already knows the truth. I hadn't left it open. I never left it open. For a moment, I let myself breathe, long, slow, the way you do when you don't want fear making decisions for you. I'm 69 years old. People think that number means soft. It doesn't. I pushed the door open with my foot and stepped inside. The apartment smelled different, too sweet, like someone trying to cover something up, a floral perfume I never wore and never liked. Someone had been here. I set the groceries down quietly and closed the door behind me, locked it, listened. A faint sound came from the back of the apartment, not footsteps exactly, more like drawers sliding, the soft scrape of fabric, someone moving freely. If I had been the woman they thought I was, I would have called out. If I had been the woman they wanted me to be, I would have panicked. Instead, I waited. 30 seconds can tell you everything about a person. I walked toward the bedroom without making a sound. The door was open just a crack. Through it, I saw her, my daughter-in-law, bent over my dresser like it belonged to her. She pulled open a drawer, flipped through folded clothes, then moved to the next, efficient, confident, like she'd done this before, because she had. She picked up a small box from the nightstand, opened it, peered inside, her lips pressed together in disappointment. I watched her for a full minute. That's when she slipped my ring onto her finger and held it up to the light. My chest didn't tighten, my hands didn't shake. Something colder settled in. I stepped forward and spoke calmly. Looking for something. She turned slowly, already smiling. "Oh, Eleanor, you scared me," she said sweetly. "I was just checking on you. You've been so forgetful lately." Forgetful. I looked at the open drawers, the box in her hand, the ring on her finger. "I forget a lot of things," I said evenly, "but not this." She laughed, light, easy, dismissive. "You're imagining things again." That's when I understood. She didn't think she was stealing. She thought she was entitled. And worse, she thought I was powerless. As she brushed past me and walked out like she owned the place, she said something over her shoulder that sealed everything. "You should be grateful someone still checks on you at your age." The door closed. I stood alone in my apartment staring at the space she'd emptied. That night, I didn't cry. I didn't call my son. I took out an old notebook and wrote the date, because when someone mistakes your patience for weakness, the lesson you teach them has to be unforgettable, and this was only the beginning. I didn't write her name in the notebook that night. I wrote the time, 3:40 p.m., drawer opened, jewelry box touched, ring removed. Facts first, feelings later. That's something I learned long before wrinkles showed up in the mirror. The next morning, I woke before my alarm. I always did when my mind was busy building shelves where memories belonged. I made coffee, black, no sugar, sat at the small table by the window and watched the parking lot wake up. At exactly 8:12 a.m., my phone rang. Her name lit up the screen. I let it ring 3 times before answering. "Eleanor," she said, voice warm as syrup. "I was just thinking about you. Did you sleep okay?" "I slept fine," I replied. "How about you?" A pause. Tiny. Almost invisible. "Oh, exhausted," she sighed. "So much stress lately. You know how hard things are for us." Us. That word did a lot of heavy lifting. "I noticed you stopped by yesterday," I said casually, lifting my coffee mug. Another pause, longer this time. Yes, I told you. I worry about you being alone. You forget to lock doors. You misplace things. Funny, I said, because the only thing missing was my ring. Silence. Then a soft laugh. Oh, Eleanor, that old thing. You probably put it somewhere safe and forgot. You do that sometimes. Sometimes. I stared out the window at a bird hopping along the curb. You're welcome to come by later and help me look. I'll bring gloves. We can check everywhere. I smiled, though she couldn't see it. No, I said, that won't be necessary. Her tone sharpened, just a degree. Are you accusing me of something? No, I said honestly. I'm observing. She exhaled hard. I don't like this. You're being paranoid again. There it was, the word they always reach for when you stop being convenient. I didn't argue. I didn't defend myself. I thanked her for calling and ended the conversation. Then I turned the page in the notebook and wrote, gaslighting attempt, denial, emotional pressure. By noon, my son called. His voice sounded tired, worn thin. She says you were rude, he said. She's just trying to help, Mom. I closed my eyes. I didn't raise you to ignore evidence, I said quietly. You're overthinking, he replied. She worries about you, about your memory. My memory is just fine, but yours seems selective. He sighed. Why can't you just let this go? Because letting it go is how people disappear, I thought. Instead, I said, come over tonight. I'll show you something. He hesitated. I don't want a fight. I don't want one either. I want clarity. That evening, he sat on my couch, arms crossed, eyes already guarded. I placed the notebook on the table between us. He barely glanced at it. This isn't proof, it's just notes. So were case files, I replied softly, before they became convictions. He stood up. You're scaring me, Mom. That hurt more than anything she'd done, because fear is easier than truth. As he walked out, I realized something important. If I wanted to be believed, I wouldn't get there with words. I'd need something no one could explain away, and I already knew exactly how to get it. That night, I climbed a stepladder and adjusted a small object hidden high on a shelf. A tiny lens blinked once. Ready. Because the next time she walked into my home uninvited, she wouldn't be visiting a confused old woman. She'd be walking straight into a record. And records don't forget. The camera didn't make a sound. That's what I liked most about it. No blinking light, no hum, just a small dark eye tucked between two dusty cookbooks, angled perfectly toward the living room and the hallway beyond. I tested it once, then I left it alone. People get careless when they think no one's watching. For 3 days, nothing happened. No surprise visits, no unlocked doors, no perfume hanging in the air where it didn't belong. That's how I knew she was planning something. On the 4th night, I woke up at 2:07 a.m. Not from noise, from instinct. The kind you don't lose with age, no matter how many people pretend you do. I lay still in bed, listening. There it was, a soft click, the sound of a lock turning slowly, carefully, like the person on the other side didn't want to wake me. I didn't move. I didn't reach for my phone. I watched the ceiling and counted my breaths. 1, 2, 3, Footsteps, light ones, confident ones. The bedroom door creaked open just enough for a sliver of light to cut across the floor. I could see her shadow. She didn't check on me, didn't whisper my name, didn't hesitate. She went straight to the desk. I waited 10 full minutes before getting out of bed, not because I was afraid, because evidence needs patience. I sat at the kitchen table and opened my laptop. The screen glowed softly in the dark. My hands were steady as I pulled up the live feed. There she was, dressed in black, gloves on, hair pulled back. Not a caregiver, not family, a burglar. She moved through my home like she owned it, opened drawers, checked behind books, even lifted the couch cushions. Then she went to the shelf, the one with the ring box. My chest tightened for the first time. She opened it, empty. Her face changed. That's when I saw the real her. The smile vanished, her mouth hardened, her eyes narrowed with irritation, not concern. She muttered something angry, sharp, and shoved the box back. Then she did something I hadn't expected. She pulled out her phone and started taking pictures. My mail, my ID, my bank statements. She laid them flat, careful to get every detail. That wasn't curiosity. That was preparation. I froze the video and leaned back in my chair. This wasn't about jewelry. This was about control, about rewriting a story where I wasn't capable, wasn't competent, wasn't in charge of my own life. She wanted to build a case where she was the hero and I was the problem. I saved the footage once, twice, then to a drive I kept hidden behind the freezer tray. When she finally left, she didn't lock the door behind her, didn't care. I waited until sunrise to confront anyone. At breakfast, my son texted, "She's worried about you, says you're acting strange." I stared at the message for a long time. Then I typed back, "Come tonight, I'll show you the truth." He didn't reply, but I didn't need him to. Because I wasn't building this case for him anymore. I was building it for the moment when denial collapses under weight, and that moment was coming very soon. Because once someone crosses from theft into identity, they stop being family. They become a file. And I never lost a case that made it this far. My son didn't come that night. Instead, he called. His voice was tight, controlled in that way people get when they've already chosen a side but don't want to admit it out loud. "She says you're accusing her of things that never happened," he said. "Mom, she's worried you might be confused." There it was again. Confused. "I have video," I replied. Silence on a line. "Video of what?" he asked cautiously. "Of her entering my apartment at night," I said, "without permission, of her searching my things, photographing my documents." A long exhale. "Why would she do that?" "That," I said calmly, "is what I was hoping you'd ask her." He didn't answer right away. Then, "She says she was checking to make sure you hadn't left the stove on. You know, safety." I almost laughed. Almost. "She wore gloves," I said, "and black clothes at 2 in the morning." His voice sharpened. "You're exaggerating." That hurt more than anger would have. "I want you to listen carefully," I said. "This is no longer about feelings. This is about facts. Come see the footage." "I don't think that's a good idea," he replied. "You're spiraling." Spiraling. The word landed heavier than the others. "You're choosing not to look," I said quietly. "That's different from there being nothing to see." He hung up soon after. I sat at the table long after the call ended, staring at the dark screen of my laptop. That's when the knock came. Soft, polite, measured. I didn't open the door. Through the peephole, I saw her smile, wide, practiced, empty. "I brought soup," she called gently. "You didn't answer your phone." I stayed silent. "I know you're in there," she added. "We need to talk. This misunderstanding has gotten out of hand." Misunderstanding. She knocked again, harder this time. "I'm worried about you," she said, voice suddenly sharp. "If you don't open the door, I might have to call someone." Someone. The implication hung thick in the air. Doctors, authorities, people who decide things for you. That's when I understood the escalation. She wasn't just stealing anymore. She was positioning herself. I stepped back from the door and spoke clearly. "Leave." Her voice dropped. "Excuse me? You are not welcome here," I said. "Do not come back without my permission." Her voice hardened. "You can't do this. We're family." "No, we're not." The silence on the other side of the door was heavy. Then her voice, low and cold. "You're making a mistake." Footsteps retreated. I locked the deadbolt. That night, I added a second camera and a third. Because when someone starts threatening your autonomy, you don't wait for them to act. You prepare. And I had a feeling she was done pretending to help. Continue part 5 when you're ready. The ring went missing the next morning. Not the good one, not the one anyone would sell. The old silver band my mother wore every day of her life. I noticed it while brushing my hair. My hand reached for the box automatically, the way it had for years, even after it stopped fitting my finger. Empty. I sat down slowly on the edge of the bed. This wasn't greed. This was cruelty. She hadn't taken it because it was valuable. She'd taken it because it mattered, because she wanted to watch me search for it, panic, doubt myself, because if I looked unstable long enough, someone else would step in and decide things for me. I didn't cry. I didn't shout. I sent a text. Me. "Return the ring. Now." 3 minutes passed. Then the reply came. Her. "What ring? Eleanor, you really should write these things down. Memory slips happen." My fingers hovered over the screen. She was enjoying this. I typed one more message. Me. "I have video." No response. For an hour. Then my son called. "She says you're accusing her of stealing something sentimental," he said carefully. "She's hurt." I closed my eyes. "She took my mother's ring," I said, "on purpose." He sighed. "Why would she do that?" "To make me look forgetful," I replied, "to build a narrative." He didn't understand, or he didn't want to. "I think we need to talk about long-term care," he said gently, "just in case." That sentence changed everything, because once someone starts talking about care, they stop seeing you as a person. I ended the call and walked to the bookshelf. Behind an old cookbook, I removed the camera's storage card and slid it into my laptop. I watched the footage again. There it was, her hand, the box, the ring. She didn't hesitate, didn't admire it, didn't even smile. She pocketed it like evidence she intended to use later. I saved the clip. Then I did something she would never expect. I went to bed early, because the moment you stop reacting emotionally is the moment the balance shifts, and she had no idea how far she'd just gone. Not stealing jewelry, stealing leverage, and that kind of theft carries consequences. The next morning, I acted normal. That was the hardest part. I watered the plant by the window. I folded laundry. I even waved at the neighbor across the hall like nothing inside me had changed, but everything had. When people think you're fragile, they stop watching carefully. They stop imagining you could outthink them. By noon, I had everything I needed. I made 2 copies of the video files. One went onto a small drive I wore on a chain under my shirt. The other I placed in a sealed envelope labeled only with my name and the date and slid it into a safety box at the bank. Redundancy matters. That afternoon, my phone buzzed again. Her name. I let it go to voicemail. Her message was softer than before, concerned, almost kind. "Eleanor, sweetheart, I'm really worried about you. Your son and I talked, and we think it might be time to get you some help, just to keep you safe." Safe. That word is dangerous in the wrong mouth. I deleted the message and sat quietly for a long time. Then I called someone I hadn't spoken to in years. She answered on the second ring. "Well, I'll be damned," she said, "if it isn't the woman who never needed backup." I smiled for the first time in days. "I need advice," I said, "not sympathy." She chuckled. "That's more like you." I didn't give details, not yet. I only asked questions. What constituted trespassing when a family member had access? What shifted suspicion into proof? What turned a pattern into intent? She didn't hesitate. "Documentation," she said, "clear warnings, a line drawn so bold no one can pretend they didn't see it." That night, I drew that line. I typed a letter, short, clear, polite. "You are no longer permitted to enter my residence for any reason. Any further entry will be considered trespassing." I printed 2 copies. One I mailed certified. The other I taped to the inside of my front door, visible the moment it opened. Then I waited. 3 days passed. On the 4th night, at exactly 1:46 a.m., the camera picked her up in the hallway. She paused in front of my door, read the notice, smiled, and unlocked it anyway. That's when I knew. She wasn't careless. She was confident I wouldn't do anything. She stepped inside, moving faster this time, purposeful. She went straight to the desk, opened drawers, checked folders. Then she noticed the change, the note on the door. Her smile vanished. She backed up slowly. For the first time, she looked unsure. I watched from my bedroom, heart steady, phone already in my hand. This wasn't about catching her anymore. This was about letting her cross the line she already decided didn't exist. She turned and left quickly. The next morning, my son called in a panic. "He says you're threatening her," he said, "that you're unstable." I listened quietly. Then I said, "Tell her to return the ring." "She doesn't have it," he snapped. "She does," I replied, "and if it isn't back by tomorrow, I'll let someone else handle this." There was a long silence. "You wouldn't," he said finally. I hung up, because the most dangerous moment for someone like her is when the person they dismissed stops explaining and starts acting. The ring showed up that evening. Not handed to me, not apologized for, left. I found it inside a paper towel tucked beneath my doormat like something dirty she didn't want to touch anymore. No note, no message, just the ring. That told me everything I needed to know. She hadn't returned it because she felt guilty. She returned it because she felt watched, and people like her only back up when they sense danger. I washed the ring gently in warm water, dried it carefully, and slipped it back into its box. My hand shook just a little, not from fear, but from the weight of what was coming next. At 9:22 p.m., my son called again. "She's terrified," he said. She says you're setting her up. I leaned back in my chair. Good, I replied. What? His voice sharpened. Mom, this has gone too far. No, I said calmly. It went too far the first time she unlocked my door without permission. Everything after that is consequence. He was quiet. Then, softer, she thinks you're planning something. I looked at the dark window in front of me, my reflection staring back. She's right, I said. He swallowed. What are you doing? Protecting myself, I answered, something you should have helped with. That's when his tone changed, from concerned to defensive. You're trying to ruin my marriage. No, I said. Your wife did that when she decided theft was easier than honesty. He raised his voice. You don't know how hard things have been for us. I closed my eyes. I know exactly how hard it gets when people stop respecting boundaries, I said. That doesn't give them the right to erase mine. He hung up on me. That night, she came back. Not quietly, she knocked hard, sharp, demanding. Open the door, she snapped. We need to talk. I didn't move. You can't hide forever, she said. You think you're clever? Everyone sees what's happening. I spoke through the door. Leave. She laughed. Or what? I smiled to myself because she just asked the wrong question. Or I stop protecting you, I said. Silence. Then anger. You're bluffing. I walked to my desk, opened the laptop, and watched the live feed. Her face twisted. She knew she'd lost control. You'll regret this, she hissed. She stormed away, and I finally felt it, the shift, the moment when someone realizes the story they were writing had turned against them. Because now she wasn't dealing with a confused old woman. She was dealing with someone who had already documented everything and who was done waiting. I didn't sleep much that night. Not because I was afraid, but because my mind was busy assembling pieces. Patterns are comforting. They tell you what comes next. By morning, I knew exactly what she would try. People like her don't retreat. They escalate. At 10:14 a.m., my phone rang, a number I didn't recognize. Mrs. Clark? A man asked. Yes. This is Adult Protective Services. We received a report expressing concern about your well-being. There it was, the nuclear option. I thanked him for calling and invited him to come by that afternoon. He sounded surprised. Most people panic at that call. I brewed tea, straightened the apartment, left everything exactly as it was meant to be seen. When he arrived, he was polite, professional, young enough to still believe most reports came from a good place. He asked gentle questions. Did I feel safe? Did I manage my finances? Did I remember what day it was? I answered calmly. Then I asked if he'd like to see something. I showed him the letter taped inside my door, the certified receipt, then the footage. He watched silently as my daughter-in-law entered my apartment at night, as she searched, as she photographed documents. His expression changed. This wasn't mentioned in the report, he said carefully. I imagine not, I replied. He cleared his throat. Do you know who filed the complaint? I do, I said, and I have reason to believe it was done to discredit me. He nodded slowly. I'll be filing my own report, he said, and I recommend you consider legal counsel. After he left, my phone exploded with messages. From my son, from her. Angry, panicked, accusatory. She hadn't expected that. By evening, she came again, this time with him. They stood together in the hallway like a united front. He knocked. I opened the door just enough to be heard. "This has to stop," my son said. "You embarrassed us." I looked past him at her. "You tried to have me declared incompetent," I said evenly. She scoffed. "We were worried." "You were strategic," I corrected. She stepped forward. "You think you're so smart, but no one will believe us over you." That's when I said it. "I already have witnesses." Her face drained of color. "What witnesses?" my son asked. I met his eyes for the first time in days. "Enough." They left without another word. That night, I backed up every file one last time, because the next move wouldn't be subtle. It would be desperate, and desperation makes people careless. I knew it would end at night. Things like this always do. At 2:11 a.m., the hallway camera sent the alert I'd been expecting. Motion detected. 2 figures. She wasn't alone this time. My son stood beside her. That hurt more than I expected. They moved quietly, the way people do when they believe they're justified. She unlocked the door with that copied key, still convinced she had the right. The moment the door opened, I pressed one button. Every light in the apartment snapped on at once. They froze, not because of fear, because of realization. "What is this?" she snapped, blinking. "What are you doing?" I stepped out of the bedroom slowly, calm, steady. "Ending this," I said. My son looked at me, really looked at me, like he was seeing a stranger. "Mom, we just wanted to talk." "At 2 in the morning, I replied, "with a stolen key." She laughed nervously. "You're being dramatic again." That's when the sound came from the hallway. Heavy footsteps, radios, a knock that wasn't a request. "Police, open the door." Her face drained of color. "You called the cops on us?" she whispered. I shook my head. "No," I said. "I stopped protecting you." The officers entered, professional and calm. They already knew what they were here for. Video, reports, documentation, every piece neatly aligned. She started crying, loud, desperate. "This is a misunderstanding. She's confused. She forgets things." One officer glanced at me. "Ma'am, is that true?" I met his eyes. "I remember everything." My son didn't say a word as they separated them. He looked small, lost. As they were let out, he stopped at the door. "Mom, I didn't think you'd go this far." I nodded once. "And I didn't think you'd let it go this far." The door closed. Silence filled the apartment. Not the lonely kind, the peaceful kind. I sat at the table and opened my notebook one last time. Final entry. Truth documented. Boundary enforced. Door closed. The next morning, I packed what mattered and left that place behind. Not running, moving forward. Here's what I learned. Age doesn't make you weak. Silence doesn't mean ignorance, and family doesn't get a free pass to betray you. Some people mistake patience for permission, and when they do, the lesson has to be final. I locked the door behind me, this time for myself. If this story made you feel something, if you've ever been underestimated, dismissed, or pushed aside, like this video. Subscribe for more real, powerful stories. Comment below. Boundaries matter. Because the quiet ones aren't weak. They're watching. And when they finally act, justice listens.